doorway as he bulled his way along the quay. But there was nothing, just the rain, the rank sewage smell of the flooding canals, the purring murmur of vaporettos and water taxis out on the fog-shrouded basin, the pressing crowds, the crush of runners pelting past his left shoulder. In the middle of the crossing near the Bridge of Sighs, his attention zeroed in on the faces of the people streaming toward him. He was struck suddenly, forcefully, from behind, struck hard enough to knock him reeling into the balustrade, almost hard enough to send him over the edge and into the canal below. He slammed into the stone banister, turned and saw a skinny blonde girl in runner's shorts and a dripping tunic with a number on the back, 559. She was glaring at him, her hard red mouth twisted. She hissed something at him in a language he could not understand, not Italian, and he opened his mouth to say something equally stinging in reply, but no sound came, only a bright red spike of agony deep in his rib. He fingered the area and doubled over when he found a sharp, searing pain. The bitch had cracked his rib. Dalton, whose temper was never far from the surface, began to stumble after the blonde runner, breathing through thinned lips, indignant outrage driving him. But she was quickly lost in the crush of 100 other runners flowing around him, their feet pounding and thudding, the air thick with the animal reek of their sweat and their urine, their rapid panting breaths. And now Dalton was caught up in the flow of the marathon, carried along the quay like a leaf in a flood, staggering, his ribs sending jagged bolts of pain up into his chest. As the press of runners turned the corner by the inner cloister of the Palazzo Ducale, he was finally cast out of the stream and into a narrow cloister. He put a hand on a pillar and rested there for a moment, his chest heaving, his cracked rib burning in his side, cursing, miserable. He looked angrily around for the blonde runner. And there was Cora, tall, her black hair flying in the wind-driven rain, her long blue trench coat flapping. She was hesitating by the steps of the basilica, a sheaf of papers in her arms, watching the runners flowing around her, the pigeons swirling up like leaves. The piazza was packed with thousands of people and filled with a vast, roaring, thunderous cheering, wave after wave. He could hardly hear his own voice calling her name. Cora heard a call, turned, searching the sea of faces. Finally she found him, a flash of recognition, a fleeting smile, and then her expression changed into shock as she looked down at his hands. It was the morning of the next day. Cora Vasari and Micah Dalton were in Cortona for Porter Naumann's funeral. The same cold, slanting rain that had drowned Venice the day before was beating against the shuttered houses along the Via Berrettini. Cora Vasari was a little way ahead of him, going up the steep hillside between the overhanging roofs, the tilting walls of medieval villas lining the narrow, cobbled street. She was walking with the Carabinieri Major Brancati. She was wearing a wide-brimmed black hat, a black silk coat, very long. She seemed to be in mourning, but her head was a fraction too close to Brancati, and her hand was on his arm, an intimacy that Dalton found just possible to overlook. Farther up the street, a group of men in black stood waiting, pallbearers from the look of them, grouped around a huge rosewood casket. Naumann's casket. Dalton turned his collar up, pulled his coat tight, and plodded doggedly upward in a single file of solemn carabinieri, rain dripping down his face, funeral weather, and the streets of Cortona breathing of the grave. The column of men passed an open laneway and, glancing to his right, Dalton saw through a curtain of dripping laundry the stone parapet that ran beside the Via Santa Margherita. Beyond the parapet, in the cold gray distance, he could see the faint outline of Lake Trasimeno. A familiar figure was leaning on the parapet, screened by a wall of rain, arms folded, white face staring. Dalton looked at this figure for a time, and then he called up the hill to Cora, but the rain drowned out his words, so he turned aside and stopped. The man standing there was Porter Naumann. To be precise, it was the ghost of Porter Naumann. Naumann's ghost raised a hand, beckoning him down the lane, and in spite of the rain and the wind, Dalton could hear Porter calling his name, a faint sound lost in the hissing of running